We're in our last teaching of Good to Great. This week, final week, is Technology Accelerators. You guys remember we go through this every time. The disciplined people, right? So we want to have a part of this team and continued part of the team, people that are disciplined people that have disciplined thought that ultimately take disciplined action. So remember, we talked about the disciplined people are the level 5 leadership. We always focus on first getting the who and then the what, right? So we got to get the right who's, and then all the strategy comes after the fact. Disciplined thought is all about confronting the brutal facts. You guys deal with that now every single week, hopefully every day, just facing reality, confronting the brutal facts, pressing into it. And then building a hedgehog concept, which is we're getting closer and closer to identifying that. And then the discipline action is building a culture of discipline. I know Dan went through that last week. And then today we'll talk about the discipline action around technology accelerators. So the aim today is to get a clear understanding of the role of technology as it pertains to building a great company. So that's what we want to really understand today as an aim. The first part of this is this concept of avoiding the tech temptation. So anybody who lived, a lot of you guys might not have lived through this, but what was called the Great Videotape Format War. This was in the late 1970s to the early 1980s. And the question was VHS or beta. So Sony ended up rolling out this Betamax, which was kind of a smaller version of the VHS. 1975 JVC followed shortly with this whole video home system. That's what VHS stands for those of you that are babes in the wood that don't remember this. But Sony was the first to market, surprisingly. And they demonstrated their technology to other manufacturers, hoped that the companies would back a single format for the greater good. They appealed to like even Japan's Ministry of Trade to enforce beta as the standard video format. So JVC had their own ideas, and they went ahead and released the VHS anyways. So in this battle, cost, three factors: cost, recording time, and picture quality. Beta offered a slightly higher resolution, lower noise, and better picture. And then VHS was just a lot cheaper, but it had 60 minutes of recording time offered, and it was capable for about 120 minutes right out of the box. So unfortunately, Sony were unwilling to extend the recording time of what was called the beta devices. So ultimately, as a result of all of this, 1980 VHS dominated 70% of the US home video market. And they finally admitted defeat. Sony did about 1988 and sort of took that into a smaller production. So the reason I bring this up is because what happens is companies, and they talk about this in the Good to Great, companies can go all in on tech. They can really just put all of their chips in what they consider the tech craze or the next tech thing. And what Jim Collins states is that, all of these companies that they interviewed and researched avoided this tech temptation to just go all in and focus on the tech. So one of those examples of that was Nucor. And this is one of the companies that made it on the Good to Great. And so in 1997, Jim interviewed Ken Iverson. So he's the CEO who led Nucor. And they became the most profitable steel company in America. And so he's really excited about the conversation. how they've, kind of transformed the power of technology. He was expecting, this was going to become like the major thing was some technological breakthrough, which is the reason that they became so profitable. And they actually not only generated returns to the shareholders that beat the general market more than 5 times, but they did so in an industry that ranked in the bottom 2% of the industries in returns to shareholders during the same era. So pretty impressive, factor. Now, when he asked Iverson about the top 5 factors that led to Nucor's transformation from kind of a good company to a great one, technology didn't even come up. So it wasn't the first, the second, the third, the fourth, or even the fifth. So in this 8,000 word interview transcript, the word technology appears once. And that came at the end of the interview with Iverson. He just mentioned it almost as an afterthought. And back to the primary passion for them, which was the unique culture of the company and its people. That was really their hedgehog, was their unique culture of the company and its people. So he was just so proud of the fact that Nucor had become a Fortune 500 company with only 4 layers of management and a headquarters staff of fewer than 25 people crammed into a, they call a cheap veneer office the size of a small dental suite. So it's just interesting that one of the companies, as they go into technology, it's really almost as an afterthought, as opposed to the primary or the core components of this. And so what I'm going to talk through now is just, elements or the essence of how and when technology comes into play. And the first one is really just only after a breakthrough. So technology for all these companies that went from good to great was really a afterthought, only in the sense that they had their hedgehog breakthrough. They were really making great strides with it. And as they looked deeply into the data, uncovering this, good to great companies, they became pioneers in the application of technology only after the leap to the breakthrough. And it's usually years after. I mean, Nucor, for instance, made this bold bet on continuous thin slab casting more than a decade after it began its climb to steadily beating the market. And it just brings to the central point, when you can stand back to look at the rise and fall of great corporations over the long course of history, they find that technology is an accelerator of greatness already in place, never the principal cause of greatness or decline. So great companies first build the culture of discipline, talked about that. Disciplined people engage in disciplined thought and who take disciplined action. And then they create a business model that fits squarely in the intersection of those 3 circles we talked about, and that they can be the best of the world at, a deep understanding of their economic engine and the core values that they hold deep passion with. And then they use technology to enhance the pre-existing variables, but never as a replacement. So the perspective shift that we need to have is just that it relates, the first thing is it relates to the hedgehog. So the hedgehog's this core, and then technology is this adaptive add-on to just accelerate it, enhance it, to take it to the next level. And these companies tended to be technically sophisticated, but they're just real selective on the use of the technology. So the first question about the technology is predictable. Does the technology fit our hedgehog concept? That's the question we have to ask. If it does, then these companies wanted to be the pioneer of the application of the technology. And if not, good to great companies realize the technology is irrelevant and can just be ignored without losing any competitiveness. So that's the approach of the good to great companies, something that we probably need to be mindful of as well. So that's just a perspective shift. Everything relates back to the hedgehog concept, gets pulled through, and then ask that question. Does it fit the hedgehog concept? Another perspective shift is again, they became the pioneers of the technology as the accelerator. So when good to great companies find a technology which is aligned with their hedgehog, not only do they want to become the pioneers, but they also have the objective of harnessing the technology to accelerate the performance. Or maybe put a little differently, good to great companies look to use new technology to accelerate the momentum they already have rather than start momentum from scratch. And they view that as part of the disciplined approach to excelling in one chosen area of business. Okay, so that was the other perspective shift, is they wanted to become the pioneers of the technology as the accelerator. The other shift perspective is to use tech in unique applications. So once a good to great company finds a relevant new technology, they will rapidly become fanatical and creative in finding new ways to apply the technology. They'll come up with the original applications for the technology. The most probably even the developers do not kind of envision this, but simply just because they are so immersed in the business around the hedgehog concept. So they're using it in unique applications, probably in the process, to help that become, creative and finding ways, how could we apply this better, and to become pioneers around it. And then the perspective also, as well, is to have a balanced view about the technology. So while the media and popular culture at large takes notice of new technology, good to great companies maintain just a real balanced viewpoint. They don't tend to view technology as the most important factor in the success. They don't even devote significant portions of their attention to discussing it. Instead, they subscribe to train of thought that suggests technology by itself cannot turn a good enterprise into a great one, nor can it prevent a disaster in the making in and of itself. The people at good to great companies view technology simply as an important tool, but not the fountain of youth. And therefore, in good to great companies, how a technology is used becomes far more important than whether or not the technology is taken up. When technology is linked to a compelling and clear hedgehog concept and complemented by a deep understanding of the business, great things can and should happen at an accelerated pace. But on the other hand, even the best technology applied in the wrong areas won't help, but will generally accelerate the downfall. So again, just a balanced view as well. So, in total, good to great companies are motivated by a deep creative urge and an inner compulsion to really focus on excellence. And so technology is seen as a tool which can and should be used appropriately, but just again, it's applicable to the business and what it's all about. Okay, it's a wraparound. So the intelligent use of technology is just one part of the transformation process companies go through as they move from good to great. Usually the transformation is like an organic process. One development follows another. There's no formal launch of a development program, just one solid achievement after another, step by step, brick by brick. In fact, the best analogy for this process is the very heavy flywheel, which gradually gains momentum. As the companies move persistently in the right direction, a positive feedback cycle builds up and adds to the forward momentum of the flywheel. And conversely, if companies consistently make bad decisions over time, a negative feedback called the doom loop dissipates from the momentum of the flywheel's will. So again, most good to great transformations are cumulative, okay, rather than dramatic. So step by step, there usually is not one sweeping change that leads the company to the promised land of greatness. Instead, it's a predictable pattern of small buildups and breakthroughs occur, each contributing to the momentum in a consistent direction over a sustained period of time. Eventually, the flywheel has sufficient momentum to enable the entire organization to break through previous barriers and make impressive leaps forward. And over time, good to great companies become even better at the building momentum. Okay. So that is the overarching concept of technology as an accelerator. And you can think about it in terms of, like, we know what the core of the concept is. That's why I say we want to become an innovative sort of foundational company that happens to utilize technology to accelerate where we need to go. So that is our teaching for today. But I'm going to